Hi, President Biden's energy initiatives offer outstanding opportunities for businesses across the United States and for everyone pretty much that's seeking a new job. And his energy initiatives also help save lives. I have invited Dr. Rupu Malhorta to come on this program and share his thoughts about President Biden's energy initiatives. Dr. Malhotra awards are remarkable. He has been honored by the American Chemistry Society. He's received the Stork Award. He's in the Hall of Fame of the famed SRI organization. He's an independent consultant and also the author of a book or co-author of the book, A Quarter Mile of Oil. And he is in the Hall of Fame of SRI. And he is associate of Killen and Associates working on a project associated with President Biden's initiative. Hello, Rupu. How are you today?
Hi, Michael. Good to be here. Thanks for inviting
Yeah,
me.
uh, having a little difficulty hearing you. But how about giving us a quick overview of the key initiatives in President Biden's offering to the United States?
So there's the larger Build Back Better plan that had a very large climate initiative in energy, and we don't know about the status of that yet. It hasn't passed, and it's for all purposes it's not going to re-involve. But there is a big part of it, the America Recovery Plan, that has passed, that has been signed into bill, and that also has at least 4 different areas which affect energy and climate. And that would be germane to our discussion. These 4 broad areas would be, buildings, energy efficiency in those. There's the transportation sector. There is the clean energy generation sector. Let's think of a bucket of that. And then there's also hardening of the grid. So these are all 4 broad areas. We can delve into them.
All right, let's take a look at the building sector. Would you agree with me? Another term for what the initiative promises is the electrification of the United States building sector. What is that correct? And what is meant by electrification?
So yeah, that's a big component in it. If you think about how we heat the homes, most of the time we have a gas furnace. How do we get hot water? We generally use a gas furnace again for that. If you do the cooking stoves and ovens, they're often gas. And replacing this gas, which is a greenhouse gas, okay, its combustion produces CO2, and any leakage of methane also is a very potent greenhouse gas, and so that also contributes to it. So removing that is a big part of it. And so instead of these gas appliances and gas furnaces, the idea is to retrofit the buildings with electrical units. So use a heat pump for the heating of the homes and perhaps also heating of the water instead of your boiler, the furnace for the boiler that you use. Use electrical resistive heating for the ovens and the cooking tops, etc. So there are electrical cooked stoves these days that are coming up, induction furnace stove tops, which are, I'm told, I haven't used them, that they work very, very well, and even the cooks would love them.
Okay, and that implies that the electricity coming into those homes, those houses, those businesses is clean and green electricity. Would that be correct?
That would be
Okay.
absolutely right. You are absolutely right. We got to make sure. So that's the other part, producing enough clean energy. Yeah.
Can we hold that issue for a moment?
Yes.
And then you mentioned that part of the initiative is to electrify the United States transportation sector.
Right.
What does that mean?
So that means increasing of the changing the gasoline burning cars into electric cars. Now, there are way too many. We can't just do it on a dime. You have to it takes time. But there is a fairly large number of cars, 200 million plus vehicles, just on the small car, kind of maybe more. I think then there are SUVs and all that. Plenty of those, hundreds of millions. And they have to be converted into electric. And as you said, yes, the electricity that is used to charge up those batteries will have to be clean also.
Okay, before
And
we get to where, oh, you want saying
I wanted
something?
to add one other thing in the
Sure.
electrification of transportation. I was talking about personal transportation, but there is also the trains, and there is also the trucks, and there is also there are other aspects to it. Mass transits and making mass transits definitely, and replacing the diesel buses that are there. Those become very, very important.
So the initiative includes uh, encouraging the use of the implementation of electric trains across the United States. The trains are in there,
Yep.
and the cars are in it, like your Tesla car, and buses,
Hmm. School
even
buses,
motorcycles.
right? Uh, Postal service, service vans, delivery vans.
Yes. And what about the charging stations?
So that's also another part of the initiative to facilitate the electrification of the transportation sector. A big plan is about 500,000 charging stations have to be installed, and these would be the level 2 or level 3 or higher, which don't take hours to charge up a car, but the car could be charged up in say 15-20 minutes uh, for a reasonable amount of range. And
So
that would be the
far,
objective. Yeah,
okay,
that's a part in it also.
yes. So far on electrifying the transportation industry, I hear and envision that's a big job to build a whole new family of cars, and maybe I don't know,
Mhm.
they can't retrofit the old ones.
No, you
It's
can,
a,
but that's not the plan. That's not the plan. The plan is to build new cars,
yeah,
and the plan is also to build a whole new supply chain for these things. All the parts, all these, how do you manage it? All the different components and
yeah,
the supply and the recycle of the batteries and
uh,
all that. That'll all be
yes.
important. It, but they are part of
Well,
the plan.
since electrifying the car industry, the charging industry, the buses, the trains,
Excuse me.
uh,
Yeah.
that's going to create a need for a lot of workers, a lot of planners, a lot of investors. Do you have a sense of how many jobs the administration thinks just electrifying the transportation sector would create?
Yeah, so the estimates that they provide are in the couple hundred thousand jobs pretty easily, and that there would be, and it's not hard to think about that it would have that ripple effect. The investments in this electrification of the transportation alone. I'm not talking about the generation side of the thing. That's another pocket. This is about $175 million, $175 billion. I sorry, these are not millions; these are in billions.
That's
So
the amount the government will
That's the
invest?
direct investment from the government. Of course,
What
this will
about from
then be,
industry?
I would imagine, at least 5 times.
5 times. Um,
So
I
this
mean,
would be then, these a dollar spent generally goes into somebody else's. It requires a worker. Most of the time, it's human labor. There's some material costs, but there are some uh, rules of thumb that one could apply to estimate the number of jobs. So that's what
uh,
they do. Like a common rule that I've seen people use is like every $50,000 that is spent translates into 1 man-year, or like that's what they call a one job. A job is a 1 man-year job.
so just President Biden's energy initiative to electrify the transportation sector creates $1 billion of investment business opportunities. And
Yeah.
how many thousands of jobs did you say?
In just this sector, 250,000 is what
Yeah.
I estimate.
Can we go back to the building sector?
Yeah. So that's
Um,
another $100 billion is what they are talking about
another $100 billion.
in direct investment. So that would
And
include not just the appliances, but it would also include, it has also more mundane things in it, such as better, ventilation system, better insulation of windows, more efficient lighting, all these things that we have known for a while. But the big component is this electrifying what are currently gas-based appliances and changing them out.
okay, it seems to me that the Biden initiative to electrify the houses across the United States would pretty much benefit everyone who lives in a home,
Yep.
everyone in Kentucky, Alabama, Mississippi, West Virginia. Every consumer, every resident would, every member of the country would benefit it. That's
Yep.
quite a thing.
It would. It would. And because
Okay.
these are so diversified, you would have workers all over. These jobs are not to be outsourced. You cannot outsource that. I can't send this job to China. I mean, someone has to come and fix it in my home, then that job is created locally.
And these are what they call union jobs.
That's right. These are
And
union jobs.
and for some sophisticated analyst like you, I'm trying to be a little
Yes.
okay. Um,
I'm a union of one. Yeah.
okay, so electrification is the buildings, it is the transportation, and then there is, as part of the initiative, is to address some of the subsidies that the federal government gives certain industries like solar and wind,
Yeah.
and to not allow those subsidies to die off, but what
Right.
is to happen with them?
Yeah. So, as you rightly pointed out a little while ago, this electrification of transportation and electrification of home appliances increases the demand of electricity substantially, easily doubles it, which means we have to really increase the production of clean energy. And where's that going to come from? So they know that the wind and solar have been two of the fastest growing sectors. And they have in the past benefited tremendously with this rise because of the government subsidies, which are scheduled to be phased out. So the Biden's plan calls for putting a pause on the phase out, means extending the subsidies so that we could, by say, in the 10 years or so, triple the amount of solar that we have, which is about 80 gigawatts of power in the US installation capacity, power capacity of 80 gigawatts is from solar. And we would triple it to about 240 gigawatts. We have about 120 gigawatts of wind in the country, somewhere around that. And I would say we would also double that. So 240 of this, 240 of that, it's close to 500 gigawatts, half a terawatts of.
Yeah.
So you're talking big numbers, and
Yes.
to extend, it's not enough. These, as large as these numbers are, they are still not enough, and we will need more. And the expectation is that this will kickstart the whole thing in a way, or give it a little boost to get us on the track.
In a little while, I'll come back to your statement about what do you mean it's not enough? But by extending these subsidies, that will be another boom to the Teslas, the companies that make wind terminals, companies that make solar panels, install them.
Yeah.
It'll be a real economic boom for them.
Boom to those, right. It would be a boom to all of them. There are direct subsidies for electric vehicles, but there is a clause, as I understand, that in this, that they have to be only cars that are built in union factories. And since Tesla is not a union factory, I don't think Tesla would qualify. Oh, that's just an aside. I think this is just politics. I mean, originally Tesla was being granted for many years, or until the first, I don't know how many 100,000 cars, 100,000 or million cars, whatever it was, I forget the number. Those owners received about $12,000 subsidy from the government. And that subsidy has gone because they have sold more than that quota.
Okay, good. Well, I hope they extend the subsidies. I think it's good for the nation. And now I'd like to go to, let's say, the fourth key element in President Biden's energy initiative, and that is to build or create the advanced electric grid.
Right.
And the scope of that project is what?
So if you state it as build an advanced electric grid, like I think you and I talked about it in an earlier show about the three big components. There's the generation, the transmission, and then the consumption or the direct use of the things. So they get spread. So we talked a little bit about in the transportation and the charging stations. So the distribution part, some of it has already come up. Some of it has come up in the context of building of the appliances and all that, or the extension of the adding more capacity of wind and solar we talked about. They all come under the umbrella of making a more robust grid. But one thing that's what has not been added so far in our discussion today are making it more resilient. The U.S. grid, there are basically 4 different grids in the country. There's the Eastern, the PJM grid, there's the Midwestern grid, there's the Western grid, and then there's, of course, we have the Texas, which is a standalone one. Between these grids, they run basically north-south directions. So they're very well integrated. But across the country, they are not. So if I have surplus power being produced in, say, Iowa, and I want to consume it out west, there's no easy way of sending that power down to California from. We need high tension connectivity between so high voltage transmission lines that would serve the east-west and integrate these different grids. And that's it. Those are included. Those are pretty expensive also because it costs millions of bucks per mile or something. So 1,000 miles, it's $1 billion right away.
So can I paraphrase you? One of the new features of the advanced electric grid will be to make it possible for electricity to be generated in one of the four grids. And if one of the others require electricity or it's more competitive,
Yep.
that electricity can be sent over. In other words, you get the four electric grids to more effectively share
Yeah.
the resource. That's
Integrate these four. Yeah. Integrate them.
okay.
And so you need a high tension, high power. Maybe there'll be high volt DC lines also. They're thinking about putting a 20 gigawatts of power transmission cables for this. That's a big but. And then the other
And
part would be making these cables smart or something, so the data are also going along with it to
so
sense where the demand is and where things is, so automatically. Yeah, you were trying to say something. I'm sorry.
I missed a few words, but you now focused on the movement of electricity across within any one of the four.
Yeah.
There is a need to sense when uh, electricity is needed and when it's not needed, and
Right.
does that come
So
to the
that's right.
phasers?
Yeah. So these are the kinds of little synchrophasers that will be there that are also sensing how the demand is shifting constantly, and they're able to adjust. And if should for any reason the cable snap because of a falling tree or something, it just shuts it off even in a fraction of a second, less than the time it takes for the cable to hit the ground from the pole.
Yes.
So the
Okay.
whole that circuit gets
So
shut off.
that's a big
It is
market
a
opportunity for
big
people who
market
make.
because there are so many. And then we are focusing on this, but there are also more mundane things that are every time needed. Little transformers, and we'll need a whole lot more because we are going into distributed generations. So if you want your home, the solar panels on your home, to be able to give the power to the grid, then there's the local transformers that are there need to be able to handle the traffic in both directions at the time scale that they are needed. And we don't have many of places right now. There are more supply sometimes in the middle of the afternoon in parts than the power grid can handle. And so it just
Okay.
that energy is just lost.
Would I say those devices at the local level, at my home, we would call it a switch to allow me to give electricity to the grid, take it back when I
It's
need
more
it?
than a
Oh,
switch.
okay. A transformer.
It's often it's a transformer. It's a combination of devices. It's a combination of things. Yeah,
Okay.
because things are not there locally. They're at one level, one voltage, or one frequencies, and you want to make sure that it matches the one where you're sending it to, and it gets a
Okay.
little
And
more complicated.
and for managing the network, we need artificial intelligence.
Well, we need intelligence. I don't know. Artificial would be good, but
Well,
yes,
yeah.
yeah, the systems have to be intelligent enough to do that. Yes,
Yeah, but computer people would say
yes,
you need
artificial
computers
intelligence.
that,
Yes,
okay. All
yes.
right. And have you
That
said enough about the increased capacity of the four grids or the whole thing? How many multiple time, how much
so
more capacity will we need in the next decade or two?
yeah. So in about 2 decades, or by 2050, if we want to meet our goal of being net zero by then, we need to at least uh, quadruple the electricity.
Oh, quadruple it. All right. Again, jobs. In a little while, I'll be asking you about the business investment, but I have, I think, one or two other minor questions. Protecting our databases, our information. What about keeping the grid safe from cyber attacks?
Yeah. So
What
yeah,
do, what do we do? That has to put more computers into the network and
yes,
to
yes, and
and to
make
be able
sure
to
that they are all secure, and they are being constantly somebody's paying attention, making sure that they are not being hacked into. And unfortunately, I think we have very smart enemies also, and
yes.
vulnerabilities in the system have been exploited by one and all.
All right, I have a question. If we do not include the investment needed for the solar panels, the wind turbines, and the other forms of creating the electricity like nuclear energy, if they're not considered in the grid for a moment, what's a ballpark business forecast of the business opportunities for creating the clean and green electric grid?
Yeah, so yeah, that's I would say it's on the order of hundreds of billions.
Just hundreds of
100, 100,
billions,
100 billion, 100 billion,
a
just
hundred.
$100 billion over the next 10, 15, 10, 50, yeah, 10 years. 10 years, $100 billion is the
Okay,
business thing needed for just getting the wiring and all those things done correctly. Yes.
and tell me, jobs, a ballpark of the
So
number of jobs over.
so by the rule of thumb that I mentioned earlier, this will be about 200,000 jobs.
All right, we don't have much more time, but the Biden investments, energy initiatives investments, which move us so far away from the use of fossil fuel.
Yeah.
Tell me, do you think that move will have a significant positive impact of the United States generating of greenhouse gases?
Um, it will have a significant reduction of the greenhouse gases generated from the United States. Yes, that is true. It is not enough, and certainly it will make very little difference to the global climate unless others are also following with it. And the real advantage of this is as you do this, you hope that you drag along many other things. And as I said, this plan is a catalyst for others also to join in. And I think combined, it could make a big difference. It could really have an impact in curbing the worst of the climate catastrophes that we fear.
All right,
But
Dr.
the
Mulhall.
numbers that we are talking about, as we are looking at very large numbers, 100 billion here, 100 billion there, they do minuscule. They don't even scratch the surface for what is needed for climate change.
Dr. Malhorta, thank you. I'm Michael Killen.
Thank you, Michael. We'll talk again.
Yes.